their relationships with people are based on where you fit with each other in different socioeconomic scale. Sometimes we can see them in operation of doing it, but they just take these leaves, big leaves, soak them in water to get them like soft again, fold them in half and have like a bamboo, like a skewer going through it. And then you put them up and you can look underneath here and see how they do. They make roasted houses out of things like this. Just look underneath here and you'll see that's how it's made.
We were walking through this field to get to this hut where this family lived, this mom and children, and I looked over as they were interviewing and talking to the mom and the kids in Thai language. And I was looking around and I looked over to the left of where they were and seeing these sneakers and sandals held onto this post drying out from the rain that had happened earlier today. Just for these children to go back on and put these muddy shoes back on to go back out into the mud. And the mom just being so grateful for the food that we gave them. And the kids also, they were young and they had mismatched dirty clothes on and they just hung on, right next to their mom, and they were so happy and content with what they have. Myself, I'd never put my children in that, and yet that's all they have. That's all they had. And when I just kept visualizing that and looking at them muddy shoes on that pole, and knowing them kids were just gonna go back out into that mud once again with them muddy shoes. It was life-changing. It's very life-changing.
There was a moment in time when the testimony, especially through the human video, when I looked out and this one woman stuck out to me, and she just was staring at me, and I could see it in her that she was so sad. And I think for her, watching that and watching me and expressing the hurt and the pain that I've gone through in life and leading up to coming back to Christ and being renewed in my faith and understanding, I just felt like that was my confirmation, that was my seed, like that I planted to show this woman in the village who's never heard of God that you can be fully changed and transformed no matter how dark your past is. The purpose for me for this entire trip was to be here. I truly believe for that woman to see that pain can go away. For the children in the school that we taught in, it was absolutely beautiful.
Next year we're going to learn to dance.
ตอนนี้เราจะเต้นด้วยกันเต้นไหมเดี๋ยวเขาจะสอน
I led a children's men service at the school that we were at, and I had this whole plan of these games that we were going to have, and we had like an hour and a half with these kids. And when I got in there, we started dancing, and we did Jesus is my superhero dance. And then the team acted out the Jesus Calms the Storm story. And then after that, we were supposed to go into like a game to review the Bible story. But I just felt like the kids really needed to let it hit their hearts. So I sat down with them and I just asked them each to close their eyes, and I played worship music, and I asked them to just think about a personal storm that's in their life. And we talked about, what storms can look like, even though it's not the wind and the rain and the ocean. And I invited them up to receive prayer, but in this culture, these children are just so used to working and being reserved and perfect, and emoting isn't really like a cultural normal thing or even an approved thing. And so even I was telling the missionary, because she was translating, and I told her that's what I wanted to do and invited the kids. And she told me that like the kids want to do it, but she would say it anyways. And so we sat there, me and the team, for like 10 minutes, and not a kid came up, but I knew that that's what the Lord wanted to do in them.
It like opened up the floodgates for the other students to feel like they could come forward as well. And the part that resonated with me was when two young boys came up together, and through the interpreter found out that one of the boys was praying for his older brother, that he didn't know where he is. They've been separated. and the other boy was separated from his entire family, that it was just him. And in that moment, the Lord took me back to what he had shown me earlier that morning from Ezekiel. And he told me in my spirit that he was doing that restoration, that bringing back, that reuniting, that healing in the hearts of these boys for their families. And it really touched me because those two boys were seen by God in that moment.
One little boy named T came up, and I got to pray for him, and we all just laid our hands on him, and he was just crying, and he went back, and 3 more kids voluntarily came up, received prayer, went back crying, and we look up from after the last kid came up, and there's a sweet girl who's living at the place that we're staying, and she's been super reserved, super shy, and she's sitting there crisscross applesauce just weeping. And so we just went over to her and we got to pray with her, and then just it was a ripple effect. All these children are weeping. I mean, like, I've never seen an adult weep like this, let alone a child. And just in that moment, we all sat in the Lord's presence. Like, it was so tangible. Every child and every team member felt it. And I played Waymaker in Thai, and we just worshiped and prayed over every child. And it was so beautiful to see, like, the freedom that was happening in the breaking, because they've been carrying around so much.
It's just great being able to love on the kids and do something for them, you know. I didn't really have a father figure in my life, so to be able to give that back to them it's really special.
You are right in front of me with the answer, with the answer.
We were up in the mountains about 2 hours away from where we were staying, and we were doing kids ministry, ministering to families. And halfway through the service, I had gone out when the kids were being dismissed, and we noticed that a lady was standing there, and my eyes just kept going back to her. And she was just kind of standing. I noticed that she was rubbing her eyes a little bit, and I just knew I had to go to her and ask if she wanted prayer. But as soon as I got to her, she put her arm out to me, and I took her arm and I led her to the altar. We were able to get a translator to translate for her, and found out that she was having an issue with her eye. So the pastor had put his hand over her eye, and I put my hand on her shoulder and I started praying. And God said, put your hand over her eye. So I put it over her eye, and after I got done praying, the pastor who was translating asked her, how are you doing? And she said, I can see.
I started to wonder, something I can't deny.
It was amazing.
We ministered in a Muslim school, and we brought the love of Jesus to a whole group of kids that maybe have never experienced that before. And when we were going to that Muslim school, we drove through these rice fields, and it didn't look like rice fields at the time. It was water on each side of the road, and I asked the missionary, what is this? And she said, well, the rice has been harvested. And the kids have off this week because traditionally they would have off of school to harvest and to plant. And what we realized in that moment is that that's so biblical, isn't it? That some plant, some water, and some get to take part in the harvest. And what we did that day at the Muslim school is we were planting. We couldn't see the seed. We couldn't see any growth. It looked like just still water. But what was going on underneath was much bigger than we could ever probably even imagine.
Jess and Ashley, you guys have made a decision on a missions trip while we're in Thailand to be water baptized and follow Jesus.
One of the missionaries said it takes 3 to 4 years to sow a seed to finally get someone here to make their commitment to Christ. And God is just screaming, why has it taken you so long to take that next step? So I want to take that here.
Yes, thank you, Jesus.
There was this moment where we went into do some ministry in a slum village. Some of our team went into a neighborhood where sewage was literally running through the streets, and pulled some kids so that we could do a gospel presentation for them. And I'll never forget as we were in that city park, and we turned on this song called "This Is the Gospel." And there was this little girl, and her name was Yogurt, and man, just she wanted to be held, and I was holding her and just like dancing, and she would just like grab onto me and put her head against my chest, and I could just feel a need in her to be loved and to be held. And I was singing the song, "This Is the Gospel." And I'm sure she couldn't really understand all the words, but she was singing along in her own little way. And it's a moment I'll never forget for the rest of my life. You know, once there was a pastor that mentioned that somebody in his church came up to him and they said, you know, what if we took all this money that we're spending to go on these trips, and we just took all that money and we sent it to a country, and they were able to take that money and dig wells and, you know, and use those resources to provide for their needs? Wouldn't that be so much better than spending all this money to pay for these airfares and all these resources and sending a team to go? And he struggled with it for a little bit, but then he traveled to the country, and he was talking to the person that he went to minister to, and the man said, "You're a true brother because you came." And it was at that moment that he realized that the gospel is not that we just send money, but the gospel is that we go. That Jesus was willing to go, that he didn't just send his resources from heaven, but he stepped out of heaven and he came to us to be with us. And it's in moments like this where we're in another country where everything's so different, and the people are different, the culture's different, everything's different, but we're there with them in their mess, in their depravity, in their loneliness, and their need for a God. And it's in those moments that we realize that the money that we're spending to take these trips to go with these teams is worth every single dollar, because it's literally changing the lives of people, because we are being the gospel to go to them, to meet them where they are, and to bring them Christ.